This week on the Hollywood in Toto podcast, they're back. The Hollywood resistance is back, and I've got some of the crazy things they're saying about you know who. And we talked to film critic and marketer Giancarlo Sopo about Emilia Perez. It's the movie of the moment, chock full of controversy, but what Giancarlo has to say about the movie will surprise you, and he's got some very interesting receipts to share, no doubt.
Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
This just in, Madonna is no longer dreaming of blowing up the White House. And that's good news. I guess I have to say the original Hollywood resistance during the first Trump term was silly and outrageous and off the wall, but also a little bit fun. It was kind of a distraction from our day-to-day struggles. It was a little goofy, a little silly, a little bit inappropriate, and kind of entertaining. And it does seem to be coming back to a certain degree. Now, that Hollywood resistance took a knee after November 5th, which was shocking to a lot of people.
I didn't see that coming.
Where are the celebrities? Why aren't they marching in the streets? Where are the women's marches? Where are those pea hats, the pink hats they were wearing that were supposed to take down President Trump the first time? I guess it didn't work, but they were gone, all gone. Even the recent Sundance Film Festival had very few pieces of evidence that showed that Hollywood was responding en masse to the Trump threat anew.
Lay down your weapons!
Just wasn't there. And, even some of the Hollywood media platforms like The Hollywood Reporter and Variety were writing stories saying, where is the resistance? Where is Hollywood? We need our celebrity heroes. They must save the day once more. They must protect you and I from the threat that is Donald Trump, a.k.a. Hitler reborn.
Adolf, do you think I'm ugly?
No, they're gone. There's not much going on. What's happening? There's no movies being greenlit that's going to stop Trump in his tracks. Michael Moore, I think he may be making a new movie, but we don't know anything about it. Certainly he's the one hero we can call upon to save the day, right? He's done it so many times before. So what was going on? What was happening? Why was Hollywood so silent after November 5th? Well, I think the industry is starting to find its voice. In recent days, Richard Gere has called Donald Trump a bully and a thug, which is a little mean-spirited. He seems like a kind of a peaceful gent, that Richard Gere. Why would he say such terrible things about our president? The director of SAFE, Todd Haynes, blasted Trump at the Berlin Film Festival. He said that even those people who voted for Trump will soon regret their decision. And I've been checking the polls, and it does not seem to be the case as of yet. So I think he might be wrong on that count, but, God bless him.
Yeah. Well, that was an A for effort.
The biggest resistance fight at the moment seems to be centered around the Kennedy Center. Now, I used to cover the Kennedy Center aggressively when I was working at the Washington Times in D.C., and I was there a ton. They had great performances, a variety of shows, and probably one of the highlights of my career, maybe even from just a personal perspective, was covering the Kennedy Center Honors. That was the annual gala. They'd pick 5 or 6 august figures and honor them. It was a chance to recognize the arts, but also the whole weekend was an extravaganza of some of the biggest names in Hollywood. I mean, big, big, big. Oprah Winfrey, Paul Simon, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, just the creme de la creme of Hollywood. They'd gather that weekend to honor these stars. And I'd go to the cocktail parties. It was just amazing. I met Jack Nicholson. I met Billy Joel. Just a potpourri of superstars. It was of gas. So that's the Kennedy Center. It's all of those things and more. And recently, Donald Trump said, I'm going to clear away most of the Kennedy Center board. I'm going to install myself as the temporary chief. I'm going to put Rick Grinnell in charge as the executive director. And we're going to get rid of all the woke stuff.
There are 4 steps to becoming a drag queen.
Now, I can't speak to that directly. I've not been covering the Kennedy Center in a while. Certainly wouldn't surprise me. I don't have real specifics to share in that front, but certainly the arts community in general has gotten a bit woke. I think there's a guy who even wrote a book about that. So that was a seismic change within the Kennedy Center ecosystem. And of course, the fallout was almost immediate. People like Shonda Rhimes and Ben Folds and Renee Fleming, Issa Rae, all had projects or associations or ties with the Kennedy Center. And I said they had ties because now they've all quit those ties. That was just because Trump and his minions came on board. Now, I don't think Trump had done anything as of yet. He just said, hey, I'm in charge. This is the new board. Not going to do woke stuff. And that was enough to send a lot of these pretty famous people fleeing.
That's right, girls. Run for your lives.
So I think the Hollywood resistance is back. I think that the people who might have been a little fearful of speaking out about Trump, which is ridiculous because late night TV does nothing but speak out against Donald Trump on a nightly basis. So I think all those fears are completely unfounded. Well, I think they're starting to get their voice back. So what that means moving forward? Well, we don't know for sure whether it will be more marching, more protests, not quite there yet. But I think we'll get our best answer come March 2nd. That's the night where those golden Oscar statuettes are handed out to the rich and famous.
The Oscar goes to?
Now, the host of the evening will be Conan O'Brien. And Conan is no Jimmy Kimmel. He's no hard propagandist for the left. He is a liberal for sure, and he's shown that on occasion, but he's been pretty much a let's put on a show kind of a guy. And I suspect he'll probably want to do just that on Oscar night and keep the focus on the movies and on the funny. But will he? Will he be pressured to say something against Trump and turn the night's monologue into something that is akin to a Colbert monologue? I don't know. Will the presenters and the honorees be able to focus on the films, thank their mom and dad and their agents, maybe their best friends, maybe an old high school teacher who inspired them? Or will they too become part of the new resistance? This is my area of expertise. This is the point where I'm supposed to kind of show my crystal ball and tell you the answer.
You wonder what I see in your future?
I just don't know. There are too many variables here, including, of course, the Hollywood fires and the fact that Hollywood really is struggling in recent years. The fallout from the dueling strikes. You've got the rise of AI. You've got the threat of YouTube as a content provider. You've got falling ratings on TV. You've got movies that are just flopping left and right. There's lots of stuff going on. And of course, the Biden economy did the industry no favors either.
But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
So will Hollywood go full resistance on Oscar night? It's possible. I just don't know. I do know, though, if they do it and if they push away even more either casual fans or maybe even once hardcore fans away from the Oscars, away from the movies, away from Hollywood content, it's a mistake. I think to go the full resistance now would be the worst possible time. And I don't think the brand will fully recover, at least the Oscar brand, if that happens. Well, as you know, I'm a conservative film critic, and I didn't hate Emilia Perez. Sorry, I just didn't.
So if that is why you're here, sorry, not sorry.
Now, the film is a bit of a mess. I don't disagree with that. I don't think it's a great film. I don't think it's an Oscar-worthy film either. But I found some of the musical numbers tuneful and original. I thought that Zoe Saldana was terrific as the lawyer in question, who's really the heart of the film. You know, I know she's up for a Best Supporting Actress nomination, but it's really a Best Leading Actress role. I don't know how these things shake out sometimes. It seems a little bit disingenuous, but she's terrific in it. Can't fault her at all. And I think that she may very well win. She's shown a lot of range over the years. Seems like a nice person. No troubling behind the scenes gossip rumors about her. And again, she's flat out terrific in the role, which is a very complicated one. Singing, dancing, emoting. There's just a lot to do here, and she does it quite well. So there's my opinion on Emilia Perez, but I don't have a cultural expertise to bring to the story of a Mexican drug lord who changes from a man into a woman and starts a new life. I don't. I don't have a Hispanic heritage. It's not just who I am. But someone who does have that kind of heritage watched the film, was aghast by much of it, and shared his feelings about it via IndieWire.com. He is Giancarlo Sopo, who is a film critic, a film expert, and also a marketing guru. And he brought a lot of those skills to his analysis of the film, as well as what he brings to the cultural scene and his heritage, and why this particular film, wow, did it get a lot wrong. Now, I'm not a woke guy, and I'm not for saying, well, you should have done it this way, and Glad is mad about Emilia Perez because of this reason. No, what Giancarlo shares about the film is really troubling, and not in a it's going to hurt people kind of a way. In a boy, if you're going to tell a story about a certain culture, you've got to do your homework to a degree. I don't think the team behind Emilia Perez even cracked the books. And Giancarlo is going to share why. So I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Giancarlo. He's a really smart guy. We also touch briefly on some other issues related to Hollywood, but mostly about Emilia Perez. It is the movie of the moment, for better and worse. And I think you'll be surprised to find out what he has to say about the film. And boy, did they screw this up, I have to say. Above and beyond the culture war fights, they should have got these things right. We'll explain.
Skinnier is be appreciated.
You and me both. Hey, real quickly, plug for Visto Media at the end. I'm going to mention your National Review, your new gig. Anything else you want to mention? And we're going to talk about the IndieWire piece as well.
The thing is that the National Review thing is like, it's not like really like a job or anything. I just contribute like pieces. But if you want to say that I'm a cultural writer and publicist, that's probably the easiest way to describe me.
Gotcha. Well, I'll do that in the intro, so that's no worries. We'll record that separately, so I'm not going to worry about that. We're just going to jump right into this conversation in a moment. I think that's it. I'm going to talk about Emilia Perez, why the media is so interested in sinking the film. I want to get your take on that, because that's almost been the most fascinating part for me. They're all over this story, where usually they kind of drag their feet. How conservatives should engage with pop culture. Talk about the National Review gig, just things you're looking forward to doing with the site. And then also maybe some Hollywood trends that you think are bubbling up that we're not talking about yet. I mean, you're kind of a keen observer. I suspect you might have some thoughts about where things are going and maybe other people aren't really talking about. So like
filmmaking, like craft or
I mean, just pop culture in general. I mean, things that might, get more traction, actors who are on the rise, streaming platform. I don't know, just anything that comes to mind that you've kind of noticed along the edges that might,
I'm really fascinated actually by the AI discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's like a really interesting technological advancement,
Excellent thing. All right, we're going to jump right in. Again, I'll edit this all together in a little more polished fashion, but that's it. Well, Giancarlo, thanks for joining the show. I want to kick things off with Emilia Perez. It's the movie everyone's talking about. It's the movie that's causing more controversy than I could possibly imagine, and Hollywood is no stranger to controversy. You just wrote about it for your initial piece at IndieWire and broke down a lot of the reasons why it's less than Oscar-worthy. Let's start there because, you have a background that I don't possess, and you saw many, many flaws within the movie that I just couldn't spot. And I thought that was it was so fascinating. So let's talk about it from that perspective, the Latino perspective, because it sounds like they got almost everything wrong.
Yeah, it's funny. So this is a movie that I first encountered during our baby moon to Paris in September. My wife wasn't up for running around one evening, so I said, I'm just going to go watch a movie. And that movie was Emilia Perez. It came very highly recommended by the guy at the front desk. I went and I saw it. He told me, it's in Spanish. And I was like, perfect, then I'll understand it. And I found myself struggling to understand a film, and not because it was like in very fast Spanish or something like that, but just because it was incomprehensible to native speakers, right? So I found myself really struggling to understand this film and having to rely on French subtitles, a language I haven't studied since high school, so about like 25 years. So, look, I mean, the movie is about a drug cartel kingpin who undergoes a very dramatic physical transformation and becomes a women's rights activist, had a gender surgery. And, it's a movie that you'd figure, given the sensitivities around narco trafficking in Latin America, which I understand it's an issue that's been explored in American movies. Like, look, one of my favorite films is Scarface, right? But, it's an issue you have to handle very delicately because it's extremely sensitive, especially to people around the border region, because it's impacted so many lives. And so it's bad enough that this movie, almost none of the cast members are Mexican. They're like Dominican or from Europe. And that it wasn't filmed in Mexico, but the movie just consistently, time and time again, butchers the culture. I'm talking about very simple language expressions, it gets it completely wrong. A lot of the Spanish is just simply incomprehensible. If you're a native speaker, you're not going to clearly understand what's being said. You have many literal translations of things that you could tell were written originally in English.
Mhm.
So, for instance, in America, we use the phrase "seventh heaven." There is no counterpart to that in Spanish, right? Like, at least not a direct literal translation, and that's something that's used in an Oscar-nominated song.
Yeah.
And
if you had people on the set who spoke fluently and knew the culture, they could raise his or her hand and say, listen, sorry to be a curmudgeon here, but that doesn't work. I mean, I would think that'd be part of the collaborative process.
Yeah. And then you have a lot of I could see them having a lot of blind spots on the set. So all the producers are European, right? None of the stars are fully fluent in Spanish outside of Carlos Sofia Gascon, but Gascon is from Spain, right? So it's not the same as Mexican Spanish, and they have different expressions, right? The screenwriter is Jacques Audiard, the French auteur. So I don't expect Audiard to have a fluent grasp of Spanish. Selena Gomez doesn't really speak Spanish. I think she learned, she had to memorize her lines, but she can't hold a conversation in Spanish. And Zoe Saldana is from the Dominican Republic, where they speak differently, the same way like Brits and Aussies speak different than we do. So it was just like a lot of blind spots and things falling through the cracks. Then what happened is that like this movie gets nominated or becomes France's Best Picture submission through a very questionable process through the government of France. And nobody who was Latino had seen it unless you happened to be in Paris or whatever. So there weren't the kind of loud objections that you would expect, because they had just played at a couple of festivals and then it just became unstoppable. And I thought it was really curious that they delayed its Latin American release until after the Oscar nominations were announced, almost like a strategic move. I mean, I work in PR and marketing myself, so I can see the craft when it's being practiced. So it was extremely cynical. At times when you watch that movie, it almost feels like you're being trolled. Like you're like, this can't possibly be. Like there's a line in there where Selena Gomez's character is having a very intense sexual conversation with a lover and uses the formal clinical term for her genitals rather than what you would just say colloquially in slang in that context. That is just very jarring and kind of hilarious to listen to. So there's just so much wrong with it that at some point I was like, I wonder if this is an elaborate troll like Cord Jefferson's American Fiction, where they just put out the most ridiculous possible thing they could, almost to test the Academy, and they fell for it. So we'll see how it does. It has 13 Oscar nominations. I think these past tweets from Gascon that have been unearthed have really damaged the film's Oscar campaign. I'm hearing a lot from the industry that the award voters don't want to vote for the film in any category given the controversy. The point that I make in the piece, though, is that think what you will of Gascon's tweets, and I think we could all agree that many of them were pretty objectionable, especially downplaying Hitler's atrocities. That's not the biggest problem with the movie. That is a separate issue. We can talk about whether it was prudent for the Academy to nominate such an individual with that history. That to me, that's a very separate conversation. The movie itself is intrinsically flawed, and for that reason, I don't think that a cinematic body that dedicates itself to, or supposedly supposed to be dedicating itself to uplifting the industry and highlighting the best of what this beautiful craft has to offer, that they should have given 13 of their most prestigious nominations to such a film.
I mean, so that goes to the question, why? Why did it get so many nominations? Is it just because at first glance on paper, it's progressive in nature. It's celebrating a figure who is trans and who has an arc that is oddly celebratory. I mean, I have a lot of issues with the morality of the movie. I don't think that Emilia Perez really comes to grips with the horrors of what she did. She seems like she just
Yeah.
has a blank slate and just moves on and creates an NGO of sorts.
Yeah.
Fine, but you're a monster. You need to kind of live with that. So is it as transparent as Oscars wanted to push the representation angle, or is there something else in play?
It seems to me like what they did here is that they saw an opportunity to almost like engage in performative box checking in two ways, highlighting a Latino film and highlighting, which is, it's not really a Latino film, it's a French production, but it's in Spanish, and highlighting or making history by nominating a transgender actress as best actress. I found that very problematic on the part of the plot itself. To me, it seems absurd that if you've engaged in generational destruction, and I mean I don't know what picture of what Americans understand as what the cartels do, but we're not talking about Tony Montana telling people, "Hey, no wife, no kids, man." Okay, like it's not that. It's these guys are killers, and they destroy innocent people, women, children, men as well. Obviously, they just found a couple of months ago a mass grave with children in northern Mexico. Stuff that's absolutely hideous. So if you're involved in such a nefarious industry, I don't think that just by virtue of having this very dramatic physical transformation and engaging in feminist politics, that automatically cleanses you of your past sins. I mean, it certainly doesn't do it on a spiritual level.
Yeah.
And I don't know that the road to redemption lies through these very garish musical numbers, which don't even make sense half the time what they're saying. So to me, it was culturally inauthentic. And like you, I also just found that the plot of it, I found it morally offensive.
When you think about a movie like this, I don't want to come from the perspective of I'm of a certain background, so I can only tell those stories. And I think Taylor Sheridan is a good example of someone who tells different stories, different cultures, but he seems to walk the walk. He seems to really do the research in a way that, if not perfect, captures the essence of the culture, or isn't offensive, or really does get to the heart of the issue. So I think there's a lesson here is, listen, I don't have as big an issue of you as sort of a European take on a Mexican story, but you've got to do the research, understand the culture, have, people on set who can deal with a language barrier. I mean, I feel like none of that was here. I mean, isn't that the lesson here, that shouldn't be the de facto move going forward? Yeah,
I don't think that what Hollywood needs any more of are more of these performative exercises with like, oh, we need a new diversity initiative, because I've seen films from an era when Hollywood was a lot less diverse, that were much more culturally authentic than what we just saw right now. I mean, say what you will about depictions of Hispanics in Hollywood's golden era. At least Elvis's Fun in Acapulco had the decency just to stick to piñatas, and no one was ever clueless enough to nominate that film for an award. So it's more about if you're going to tell a story from a foreign culture, the same way, like if I'm going to go visit Chicago or something, I call my friends who are from there, and I try to get authentic takes on the local culture and the vibes and whatever. It just seems to me like, well, I mean, Odiard himself said in an interview that he felt, since he had already been to Mexico a handful of times, he felt he understood all he needed to know about this culture, and he didn't have to engage in more research. And I mean, look, my family's from Cuba. I don't proclaim to be an expert on Mexico just by virtue of being another kind of Hispanic. But if I was to, if I do work in terms of like outreach to Mexicans or engaging a Mexican American community, you better believe that I'm reaching out to every single Mexican I know and asking, hey, is this legit? Should I word this way? Yeah. How would you say this? None of that work was done here. So I don't care. Like, he could have been from wherever. He should have just taken the time to tell an authentic story and show this community the respect that it deserves. the same way that any of us would expect that if someone were to come to the United States and say, like, do a movie on 9/11, they would check with, hey, how do New Yorkers speak, right? Maybe this protagonist shouldn't be walking around New York with a British accent. That doesn't sound legit, So they just didn't do their due diligence. It's not just culturally inauthentic. It is very sloppy filmmaking. So I don't know how the industry could ever save face by celebrating such a film. It's unfortunate that this is what checks off as a diversity initiative. I'm all for telling very unique stories. Like, one of my favorite films of last year was Dee Dee, the story of the middle school kid whose mom had the immigrant background, I think from Taiwan. Reminded me a lot of my own upbringing. That seemed to me like a very authentic story.
Yeah.
Like, they really put in the time and care. None of that due diligence was conducted here.
When you think about, one last question about this movie, the Oscars are in a tough spot right now. The ratings have been falling, generally speaking, over the years. It doesn't have the clout. Whenever I mention Oscars on social media, my right-leaning friends blow a gasket or a nerve or some other medical health injury. This doesn't help. This doesn't raise up the cachet of the awards. How much damage is this going to do? I mean, not even just to the film itself. And listen, gossip and headlines, they come and they go. But this feels like a real body blow to the Oscars in general. Am I overreaching?
I think it could certainly damage the institution's credibility as an industry tastemaker. But it happens to be that the number one movie ticket buyers per capita in the United States are Hispanic. And you just made a film that upset a whole bunch of Latinos that they just can't relate to, that they think is completely foreign to their culture, that they actually find disrespectful. So I think it damages the industry, both in terms of as a credible institution, in terms of the Academy, but more broadly, you're alienating your most loyal audience. So just a complete misfire on several fronts. One thing we didn't talk about in the previous question in terms of a motive for rewarding this, when I originally saw this film, I just thought to myself, because I saw it in September, I thought Donald Trump is likely going to win, and they will respond by nominating this film because they think it's an adequate response to his election. And no matter where you fall on that issue, it's completely counterproductive. I think the example that I would point to is the Latinx initiative that completely alienated Latinos, and I think accelerated a cultural shift, a political shift that was already happening in the community towards the right. I think seeing the preeminent cultural institutions, not just in this country but also abroad, embrace such an incompetent film could further accelerate those trends.
Yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit. Obviously, this was a piece you wrote for IndieWire, and good for them for publishing it, but you're now a contributor to the National Review website. Talk about what you have in mind for that outlet. It's a great place to check out news and commentary. I know Kyle Smith used to do film reviews there, and he's among our best. So what are you looking forward to about that particular collaboration?
Yeah, so it felt like a very natural home. I had already been writing movie reviews there for the past year, and they've given me the opportunity to contribute even more to the website. Just a really thoughtful bunch of readers. I love reading the comments whenever I post a movie review. If I make
that's rare, by the way. Right?
Pardon?
Thoughtful comments on the web. It's yeah, you got to appreciate that when it happens.
Yeah, so it just seems like a fun place to be, and I've never received any kind of instruction like, oh, you must cover this movie from a conservative perspective, or this is too liberal or whatever. They just let me do my thing, and I've had a great run there this past year. I think the types of things that I'd like to do, because I also sense, like you do, that many times when you try to engage folks on the political right on cinema, they tend to be a little skittish. They're very distrusting as the institution. And what I always tell people is that, yes, I mean, Hollywood obviously is a politically liberal institution, but the studios are ultimately in the business of selling movie tickets, right? And what I'd like to do is help conservatives or just centrist or wherever you are on the political spectrum, see their own values reflected in cinema, because I think the more people that can become stakeholders, the better for cinema, the better for our culture. I think it's good to have things to talk about besides politics, the political controversy of the day. I missed when people would just argue about sports. I missed when my arguments with friends was about whether Dan Marino was a better quarterback than John Elway. So those are the types of discussions that I'm interested in, and I'm very passionate about cinema. I try to watch about a movie a day, and sharing that with people is what gets me really excited.
Yeah.
Regardless of politics, I mean, I've worked in politics for a long time, and these days I'm much more excited about cinema and sharing that passion with people.
In recent months, we've had platforms like the Daily Wire, Angel Studios, just we'll call them generically right-leaning. I know it's complicated in the Daily Wire. Not every film that they produce is of that nature, but they're doing things that are different than the mainstream. And I think The Blaze is flirting with some projects as well. There is an emerging sense here that people on the right can tell stories. The technology is making it easier. It's much cheaper to do it. You're in this space and you've kind of worked in different areas that kind of overlap with Hollywood in a sense. What do you see that they're doing right, and what would you like to see them do more of moving forward? Sort of like the voices outside of the mainstream, the voices outside of Hollywood, who are trying to kind of crash the gates.
So to answer your question, I'm all for more people contributing to the cinematic space if they want to make good, thoughtful films. If they want to go and remake, or not remake, but make the 2025 equivalent of The Leopard and the Federico Fellini movies and some of those classics, I would love that. I love movies of that caliber. If it's just to hit me over the head with politics, then I guess I would just watch Fox News or MSNBC. I've seen some very interesting projects come out from that space. Now I would separate narrative fiction from political documentaries. That seems to me like a more natural space for conservative publications, because it's very upfront as to what you're getting. But yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to go out there and make great films, why not? That's right, left, or center. That's fantastic. Some of my favorite movies have been by very liberal filmmakers. If you grew up in the 80s, I'm sure you know the history behind John Carpenter's They Live.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the whole movie is supposed to be a critique of Reagan, but you could still watch that movie and it would, not necessarily read it that way, but it is supposed to be a very overt critique of Reagan, but it's still a fantastic film. So I'm cool with great cinema. It doesn't matter the source. I'd love to see more people getting involved in creative projects. Whether it's cinema, whether it's in the narrative fiction sense, or documentaries or theater, more people in the arts to me is fantastic, and it's great.
One last question, just as someone who watches a lot of movies, who's been in this space and overlapping with politics for sure, but a movie lover first and foremost, what do you think is coming down the pike in 2025? Obviously streaming is huge. We've got some more sequels and remakes and reboots coming our way, a new attempt at Superman, but are there things bubbling up beneath the surface that you're noticing, or trends or shows that you think, well, this could be breaking bigger in the year to come? What's anything that comes to mind?
So I was heartbroken that Quentin Tarantino's movie is not being made, at least not in the foreseeable future, his 10th film. I hope it's not his last film. I hope he makes 10 more. I'm really excited about Paul Thomas Anderson's work that he's got with Leo DiCaprio. And in terms of just like a craft trend that I'm very interested in is the use of AI in cinema. We all saw the controversy with The Brutalist, and it's got a very minor use of AI. I think it was just to correct some vowels in Hungarian. There was a lot of controversy over that. I understand why people would be uneasy, but it does seem to me like the industry is going to be moving in that direction anyway. Yeah. And so how we do it in a way that's ethical and where we're not erasing pure art and just outsourcing all of it to a machine is something that I'm interested in seeing how that technology develops.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that's not to be stopped. It's here. It'll only get more commonplace. And as much as Hollywood fights it, they're going to have to find a way to live with it and do it in a way, like you said, that's more ethical and more attuned to the human spirit without making it, I guess, the next and last Terminator film, because that's the worst case scenario. Well, Giancarlo, thanks for joining the show. Of course, people can follow you on, where can you follow on Twitter? What's your handle that we can share? And
So it's my name both at Twitter and at Letterboxd.
gotcha. That's
Yeah.
Giancarlo Sopo.
Yeah,
And then also Visto Media is your company. It's a consulting firm, PR, marketing. And we'll be looking forward to more of your work at National Review. And I do hope that other outlets, could be across the political spectrum, start to embrace your work as well, including, listen, IndieWire is very left of center at times. So I applaud them for giving you a voice, and as well they should. So keep up the good work. And thank you for bringing these issues to light with Emilia Perez, because I saw it. I had a lot of issues with it. I think I liked it more than you, but I just wasn't aware of all the cultural gaffes in there, which are significant and are profound and should be noted. So that's all the better that we know about it now. And I don't think they're going to have a happy Oscar night, let's put it that way. But
yeah, no, I mean, listen, if I didn't speak Spanish, a lot of the stuff would just fly over my head, because on the surface level, it seems almost like a kind of a cool story. If you're not well versed in the regional history, but there are 600 million people in the world who speak Spanish. We're not talking about Aramaic or ancient Greek. They could have literally just reached out to anyone in Mexico and been like, "Hey, is this legit?" So that's a big part of the problem that I have with it. But yeah, let's see what happens. Do you have any Oscar predictions?
I don't. I thought initially that The Brutalist would come away with the Best Picture. Now I guess there's some conventional wisdom around A Complete Unknown, which is a movie that I really enjoyed. It's my favorite movie last year. I don't know. There's no consensus right now. I think that Demi Moore is going to win Best Actress. I think the competition this year isn't as stiff as it usually is. I think the Gascon situation is going to cast that. That's not going to happen. So I don't know. It just seems like Hollywood likes feel-good stories, and an older actress who was famous and beautiful when she was younger, and now she's a career comeback. It's fun to see and good for her.
I mean, and with all due respect to my lovely better half, she's still beautiful. I mean, Demi Moore looks fantastic at 60 years old. I wish I looked that good. And yeah, the movie's fantastic. I really like the substance. I don't think it's going to win Best Picture. No. I feel like A Complete Unknown would be a pretty safe, feel-good pick if they don't want to rock the boat. And I could see a situation because they use ranked choice voting, where it could be like a second choice for a lot of people. And if there's a split in the first choice, it would rise to the top.
I agree. One last quick thought. To me, the fact that they made The Brutalist for reportedly around $10 million, there should be a special. It's a beautiful looking film. It's got this epic scope. And I just think on that level alone, it's like telling the Hollywood bean counters, my God, you've got to be able to make movies at a cheaper price point, because look at what they've done. Look what Godzilla -1 did. You've got to cut these costs. It's just unacceptable right now. But that's a story and a conversation for another day.
We should be able to get 5 of those per year, to be honest with you. I mean, and like I really admired some smaller productions this year. Mm-hmm. Like I don't know if you watched this one. It was called Ghostlight.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it was a really poignant story. Sing Sing was another relatively inexpensive film as well. We need more films like that. I thought that they just told very beautiful, powerful stories, and I hope the Academy engages into like some serious reforms, because I also don't like these situations where 3/4 of the nominees are films that were released in the fourth quarter of the year due to recency bias. So they should also be addressing that. But yeah, let's see. I'm not going to bet my house on anything this year. It's very uneasy, but I feel at least it seems like Emilia Perez doesn't have the wind in its sails anymore.
Yeah. If it goes over 13, I wouldn't be shocked, but we'll have to wait and see. Thank you again, Giancarlo. Appreciate the chat.
Yeah, likewise.
Your character actor of the week is M. Emmett Walsh. Well, that's it for the show this week. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Radio America for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. And if you ever get the chance, if you could share or like the show on social media, tell a friend, let other people know about what's going on with this show. I like to focus on guests you won't see in other podcasts. I think that's important. I think it's vital. I think these are voices that deserve to be heard. I hope you agree. And if you do, again, give us a little love. And by the way, I really do appreciate it if you check out hollywoodintoto.com. That is my website. I started it in 2014. It is more than 10 years old now. It's kind of scary. I haven't aged at all, but the website clearly has. We've got some interesting guests coming up, including a dancer who really shows the behind the scenes struggles on and off Broadway and how that woke culture really infected how things went on behind the scenes and how troubling it was. Just some personal perspectives to share, and I think you're going to like. That's coming soon. So again, hope everyone has a wonderful week. Stay safe, stay smart, and be kind to each other. We'll see you next time.